There was, however, a peculiar device on the roof. Another one of those shimmering portals was placed there, indifferently waiting to cast its next visitor aside. Some time ago, I had a nightmarish experience with such an apparatus, and it left me scarred. So I prayed to whatever gods were listening, and touched the shimmer. And just as predicted, I found myself in another place altogether. Wait, wasn't that the fortress I had seen from so far away? The fort with that dreadful pit, or so it seemed, was connected to this building of staggering proportions. I began to wonder about the peculiar emptiness of this clearly militarized area. Why were there no soldiers here? Surely this was the place. If this looming monument of power wasn't befitting for a legendary general, nothing was. What was that? Was that shields? Why were they being used as decorations? The entire situation was rather disquieting. Hopefully, I would find the castle abandoned. Sadly, that was not the case, because as I approached the main gate, an intimidating sight met me. There were not one, but two of those fiendish beasts. My inclination toward kind-hearted generosity made me search for another entrance, leaving those cruel creatures to their own devices. Riding along the great wall, we passed disgusting and disease-bearing bats, snatched a treasure of knowledge from an unassuming scarab, and before long, I was nervously climbing my way into the unsettling castle. The first thing I noticed was the inexplicable absence of guards. There was no one around, yet I wandered the grounds with an eerie feeling of being watched by someone. It wasn't even as if the fortress was entirely empty, as signs of life could be seen all around me. But there was a certain humming in the air, or rather, a distinct murmur of voices coming from somewhere nearby. Something was about to happen, and the murmur, which now struck me as singing, almost seemed to imply a revelation of some sort. Had all the inhabitants gone off to a sacred ritual deep within the structure? For some reason, these strange thoughts rekindled an old memory.
And upon their southern edge is Redmane Castle, in which a festival of combat is being held.
Why now? I hadn't thought of him in ages, yet somewhere deep inside me, connections were being made, and proceeding further into the fortress, I knew that I would now be imposing on something out of this world. Recognizing the warlike decorations from earlier, I entered an open courtyard, and much to my surprise, noticed several familiar individuals listening to that solemn choir of ill tidings. Would you look at that? There he was, Rani's embarrassingly vain wolf-servant. And dear Alexander, by far preferring that large living jar over the self-admiring warrior dressed as a man, I ran to my long-lost friend, only to be interrupted by a fellow I hadn't noticed until then.
The festival is nigh! General Radahn, mightiest demigod of the Shattering, awaits you! Champions, prepare for battle!
Did he use the plural? Right. Who didn't love jolly cooperation?
Grab that great rune! A celebration of war! The Radahn Festival!
Suddenly realizing that I had willingly walked straight into this lion's den, I now stood paralyzed until sobering rain awoke me from a sorry state of apathy. Finally, I was able to talk again.
Ah, you came. How delightful. Indeed, I thought I might find you here. By the by, do you know for whom this festival is being held? Well,
Oh yes, I had a vague idea.
other than General Radahn himself. To think, I could face a great champion of the Shattering, a demigod in the flesh. Oh, God. In truth, I quiver at the thought. Such is his frightful repute.
What was he trying to prove?
The fear simply assures me the ordeal is worth undertaking. Be sure to get a good vantage, my friend. I, Iron Fist Alexander, do do hereby vow to unflinchingly brave this ordeal.
It felt so good to see him again. Besides phantoms from other worlds, preoccupied with their own private festivals of violence, there were unknown individuals here as well. Among them, I found an inscrutable maiden who for some reason refused to speak, and eventually there was no other choice than to awkwardly acknowledge the presence of a certain wolfish creature, clearly not suffering from low self-esteem.
Thought I might find you here. I must admit, I was a little worried. We missed our meeting.
What meeting? What was he talking about? I couldn't recall us agreeing to such a thing.
That Starscourge Radahn holds Rani's fate in stasis. But once he's out of the way, it will spring back into motion. So now, we stand against the demigod once known as the strongest of them all. The way ahead is pleasingly simple. We fight, sword and fang.
I really didn't like that fellow after all. His attitude was unbecoming of a servant, and frankly, more resembled that of an entitled nobleman with a swelling sense of self. With nothing left allowing me to postpone the inevitable, I proceeded up the stairs. Approaching the jester posing as an official, I was asked whether I was ready for this ordeal, and upon confirming, that lively and elderly creature began to paint vivid pictures in my mind.
Before we begin, allow me to paint you the full picture.
And I saw a horrific wasteland. Poor thing. Why was it suffering like that? Was that enormous figure riding the scrawny steed? What abusive behavior.
General Radahn is cursed ever to wander.
Oh my. So that nightmare of a warrior was none other than the General.
Scarlet rot. His wits are long gone.
By the gods. What was he about to do to that long-dead soldier? Oh no.
Now he gathers the corpses of former friends and foes alike, gorging on them like a dog.
I didn't really feel like doing this anymore.
Howling at the sky.
Just wonderful.
But now, we must make merry.
O gathering of champions, the revels begin. The celebration of war. The Radahn Festival!
I see. He liked putting on a show. Obviously, he wasn't wearing that costume by mere chance.
You will find the field of battle past the church ahead, upon the shore under the fort. General Radahn is there, even now, divested of his wits, devouring corpses, and howling at the sky.
Bothered by the unnecessary repetition of an already frightening detail, I left the jester with his ridiculous attire, and entered a place of worship. What was wrong with that fellow? Did he enjoy making people feel scared? Leaving the small church, my soul was shaken, and I gasped at the sight below me. This was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Yet somehow I managed to put the apparatus into motion, descending into the dark. At the bottom of the wooden lift, and upon reaching the shore, I took a breath, while enjoying the numbness slowly taking hold of my heart. At last confronting this frightening rite of passage, I touched the shimmer and found myself in that desert of despair.